The Gaza Strip is an area of great geopolitical importance in the heart of the Middle East, a territory that has been disputed between Israel and Palestine for over 70 years, thus becoming the scene of one of the longest-running conflicts in contemporary history. A blood-stained strip of land that knows no peace, a cemetery for thousands of people, an open-air prison where 2 million Palestinians live, whose only fault is that of being born there. The Gaza Strip is hell on earth, a place where the death sentence is served by living, or rather by surviving. Here, the days are marked by the sound of bombings, the sound of air raid sirens, and the loud explosions that precede the collapse of buildings. It doesn't matter if it is your school or your home. The only thing that matters is to hit, destroy, and completely annihilate the enemy. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is the result of political tensions and territorial claims that no negotiation has ever managed to resolve, and which is still at the center of numerous armed conflicts. The latest one began on Saturday, 7 October 2023, with a massive missile attack of over 5,000 rockets coming from the Gaza Strip towards Israel, which officially declared a state of war in the country. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is an extremely complex issue that has its roots very deep, but which is not the subject of this video, much less of this channel. The purpose of the video is to describe the living conditions in which the people of Gaza have lived for years and the food, health, and physical repercussions that inevitably affect the inhabitants. Not only that, we will also analyze the psychological effects of the war on the civilian population residing in the Gaza Strip, in particular on children, innocent victims of gears much bigger than them, human beings deprived of their human rights. To do this, we will rely on the results of some scientific studies that have been conducted over the years in the Gaza territories, but above all, on the report published in 2022 by Save the Children, the largest independent international organization for the defense and promotion of children's rights. Before getting to the heart of the matter, however, we must start from the territory we are talking about in order to take a clearer picture of the socio-economic conditions in which this increasingly collapsing country finds itself. Geography. The Gaza Strip is a small coastal territory which overlooks the eastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea and borders Israel to the north and east and Egypt to the south. It is a strip of land that extends for approximately 25 miles in length and varies from 3.7 to 7.5 miles in width, with a surface area of 140 square miles. Just to get an idea, approximately twice the size of the city of Washington, D.C. is a territory claimed by the Palestinians, along with the West Bank and East Jerusalem, as part of the State of Palestine. Population. Despite its limited extension, the Gaza Strip is one of the most densely inhabited territories in the world, with a population estimated at almost 2.4 million people, where 50.7% are male and 49.3% females. Of these, 47% are represented by children. The predominant part of the population residing in the Gaza Strip is made up of Sunni Muslims, with small Shiite Muslim and Christian communities. Who controls the Gaza Strip? Since the victory in the 2006 legislative elections, the Gaza Strip has been controlled by Hamas, an acronym for Islamic Resistance Movement, a Palestinian political religious extremist organization born with the aim of liberating Palestine from the Israeli presence and building an Islamic state there. Hamas is listed among terrorist organizations by the European Union, the United States, Canada, Japan, and Israel. The Gaza Strip is effectively governed by Hamas, which claims to represent the state of Palestine and the Palestinian people, but Israel indirectly controls life there. This is because since June 2007, the Gaza Strip has been subject to a land, air, and sea blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt in order to limit the transit of people and goods for security reasons. Israel thus controls airspace, territorial waters, population registers, the entry of foreigners, imports and exports, as well as the tax system. A blockade, which according to Israel is necessary to limit the launch of Palestinian rockets from the Gaza Strip on their cities, to prevent Hamas from obtaining other weapons, and to protect Israeli citizens. For the Palestinian population and humanitarian groups, including Amnesty International, it is instead a form of collective punishment and a clear violation of international law. Conditions of the country and effects of the Israeli and Egyptian blockade. The imposed blockade involves the closure of 7 official border crossings along the Gaza Strip, 6 with Israel and 1 with Egypt. All goods passing through here are subjected to severe Israeli control to avoid, according to what they claim, weapons arriving in the hands of Hamas. Entering and exiting the Strip is practically impossible for those who live there. For this reason, it has been defined as an open-air prison where Palestinian civilians live like rats in cages. The agreements with Israel, in theory, would provide a pass only in case of urgent needs or to a certain specific type of merchants, but they are rarely granted. Gaza is therefore isolated from the rest of the world and depends on Israel for water supplies, electricity, telecommunications, and many other services. According to data provided by the United Nations, 80% of Gaza's inhabitants live in poverty, with an unemployment rate in the territory among the highest in the world, equal to 46%. Water. Water supply and sanitation services in the Palestinian territories are characterized by a serious water shortage due to the depletion and poor quality of the only aquifer in Gaza. Not only that, existing treatment plants do not have the capacity to treat all the wastewater produced, causing serious pollution of the aquifers. According to the World Health Organization, 96% of the water distributed by the public network within the Strip is not drinkable and therefore not suitable for human consumption. For those who do not have economic resources available, the only choice is to use the water that comes out of the tap, dirty and contaminated, which makes banal gestures such as drinking, washing or cooking very dangerous for health, as it increases the risk of getting sick. More than 70% of families in Gaza receive water for a period of 6 to 8 hours, once every 2 to 4 days, due to insufficient electricity supply. Those who can afford it, however, must rely on private systems for the desalination of seawater and are forced to purchase desalinated water in containers or tanks at prices 10 to 30 times more expensive than running water, thus constituting a significant expense for already poor families. A solution which, among other things, offers no guarantee that the water is safe for human consumption. In the contrary, according to surveys conducted in 2015 by the Palestinian Water Authority, in almost half of the cases it was contaminated. The presence of microbial, chemical, and physical agents has been reported mainly due to unhygienic practices during water transportation or storage. All of these factors increase the risk of chemical and biological contamination, including increased nitrites, nitrates, and chloride, and the formation of viral and bacterial pathogens associated with waterborne diseases. According to the World Health Organization, in 2016, poor water quality contributed to more than a quarter of all illnesses reported in Gaza, including viral meningitis, dysentery, hepatitis A, typhoid fever, anemia, and liver and kidney disease. These diseases can jeopardize the nutritional status of infants and children and can lead to stunted growth and delayed development. Electricity. Adding to the serious health and water crisis in Gaza is a dramatic shortage of electricity, which further aggravates the water crisis as electricity powers desalination and wastewater treatment plants. Since 50% of the electricity in Gaza is supplied by Israel, the Palestinian population therefore has to deal with only a few hours of electricity per day, on average 4, based on a rolling blackout schedule of 12 to 16 hours, which mostly affects densely populated areas. Residents who can afford it make up for the lack of electricity by using private generators, uninterruptible power supplies, or with self-production from diesel and solar. Backup generators that are unreliable due to their dependence on fuel and their inaccessible spare parts. The continuous power outages have a negative impact on the service provision capabilities of hospitals, which will not be able to ensure the functioning of dialysis machines, for the sterilization of medical devices, radiology and diagnostic imaging equipment, mechanical ventilators, and intensive care units. All hospital patients are always in danger, especially people with chronic conditions or those in intensive care, including newborns receiving life support. The restriction on the movement of people and goods has made it increasingly difficult to supply essential goods in the Gaza Strip, limiting medical assistance and food supplies. According to the United Nations Agency report, 80% of people in the Gaza Strip depend on international humanitarian assistance. 53% live below the poverty line, and 63% suffer from moderate or severe chronic food insecurity. It is a term used to indicate a condition experienced by those people who do not have a sufficient supply of healthy, safe, and nutritious. Children are always the most vulnerable and pay the highest price. Without enough food and the right nutritional balance, they are at high risk of acute malnutrition. This results in stunted growth, hindered physical and mental development, increased risk of contracting fatal diseases, and ultimately causes death. Families in Gaza follow a very limited diet, low in micronutrients such as vitamins and minerals, and mostly composed of inexpensive foods such as bread, rice, and legumes, and rely on humanitarian food aid. While on the one hand, the lack of drinking water makes it impossible to prepare and cook some foods, on the other, the continuous blackouts prevent the correct storage of food in the refrigerator. The food security of the inhabitants of the Gaza Strip therefore depends heavily on Israeli policies of closing the borders. The blockade imposed by Israel and Egypt controls farmers' access to their lands and has imposed severe restrictions on access to the sea, fishing exports, and banned the movement of fishing boats off the coast of Gaza. Effects on mental health. The population living in the Gaza Strip lives under the constant threat of further conflict and growing economic difficulties with little possibility of escape. Children make up 47% of Gaza's population of 2 million, with over 800,000 having never known life without the blockade. In the Gaza Strip, 4 out of 5 children reported suffering from depression. More than 50% of children in Gaza have considered suicide, and 3 out of 5 have committed acts of self-harm. This is what emerges from the disturbing results published by Save the Children. The research found a significant worsening in children's mental health compared to 2018, with emotional suffering increasing from 55% to 80%. The high levels of stress to which the inhabitants of Gaza are subjected significantly increase the risk of developing severe and long-term mental health problems. 40% of young people suffer from mood disorders, 60 to 70% from post-traumatic stress disorder, and 90% have stress-related problems. However, we are talking about the most serious form of stress, which occurs in response to strong or prolonged exposure to a traumatic event, which slowly poisons the body from the inside. This is toxic stress, a condition that causes changes in the brain architecture, including a reduction in the size of the corpus callosum, amygdala, and hippocampus, and prevents the correct functioning of some vital organs, with serious damage in the developing child. The continued activation of toxic stress responses in the Gaza population may have a permanent impact on their mental and physical health. Children commonly reported feeling unsafe when away from home and their family. They experience constant anxiety about being separated from their parents, with 63% never feeling safe away from them. Children's emotional distress is accompanied by significant behavioral changes and physical symptoms. 68% have difficulty sleeping. 63% report suffering from nightmares, and 53% suffer from nocturnal enuresis, involuntary loss of urine during sleep. Lack of sleep has a detrimental impact on the physical and mental health of children and adults, increasing the risk of psychiatric disorders, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and attention deficit disorders, as well as a host of long-term health problems, including diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and even premature death. The road to hell leads directly to Gaza, an open-air prison, a place where human rights are denied, a place where water and electricity are a luxury that you can be deprived of at any time, where if you leave home on the wrong day, you can find death, where every day could be your last. Here, children have no dreams, no hopes, but the belief that, as it was for their parents, this will be their harsh and unchanging reality for the foreseeable future. Here, in the Gaza Strip, where peace is just a mirage,